Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. This is a new episode of your favorite program on Public Access TV and Education Channel 21. This is Education Exchange. On behalf of John Karhoff, Mike Peterson, and myself, Hani Elkadi, I would like to welcome our very distinguished guest, Dr. Craig Hansel, who has been with us supporting us and explaining to us the most difficult formulas in the world in a very simple way. Our Chief Financial Officer at the school district, as well as Secretary of the Board of Education.
Thank you.
Dr. Hansel, welcome. We have had long discussions with you before, and you made a very tough subject easy.
Thank you.
Even for me to understand. And I would like to use the minimal amount of words from my side to give you the chance to cover in the next 25 minutes all the people's questions and concerns regarding the financial policy of our district. And last time we talked about taxation and about TIF.
We did.
What's TIF, by the way?
Tax increment financing.
Okay, that we'll make sure that everybody understands.
Yeah.
And we know that you are right now in the middle of really busy time because you are preparing your budget.
Yes.
And thank you, number one, for accepting our invitation to come tonight. And then this by itself shows how great you are to come within the time that you may need to rest a little bit to explain to people.
Thank you for having me.
Go ahead, Dr. Hansel. Tell us about the preparation process and what are you exactly doing right now?
Sure. Well, when the calendar turns over the new year, we really get busy in the business office, and we have until April 15th, which is the statutory date, when all Iowa schools must certify their enrollment or their budget with the Department of Education, and in this case the Department of Management, who's the one that manages those financial pieces for the state of Iowa. And so we back up from that April 15th date, and we put a process in place that involves all of the stakeholders within our community, and it's a very transparent process. We started in January with our Board of Education on the 28th, and we, at our Operations Committee meeting, we actually went through a series of assumptions. And what those are, Hani, is that we in the budgeting lingo, I guess you'd say, is that we have to make certain assumptions about what's going to happen with revenues and expenditures in the year ahead in order to put a budget together. And so we talk about what those inputs into that process are going to be. For instance, what's our state allowable growth or the state percent of growth? And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, I'm sure. But, you know, it makes a big difference in whether you're talking 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, or whatever that may be on the revenue side of the equation. And then on the expenditures, and, you know, what are we looking at for salary adjustments? Because we are a people-driven organization, that's where most of our money goes. And so what are we looking at for salary adjustments? What do we expect for inflation? Do we have a new textbook adoption cycle that we're trying to fund this year? I know that we have some new assessments that have been placed on us and are required by the state. That we have to put our students through now, and those cost money. And so we have to factor all of those pieces into the budget. And so we sit down with our Board of Education and we go through all of these assumptions that we can reasonably be forecasting, and they give us their input as elected officials on taxation rate and those types of things that we have a small amount of control over. And then I go back and I start my job, actually, in putting it all together. And then coming up here on, well, it'll be tomorrow already, February 11th, the Operation Committee Chair will report out from the board to the entire board about what our assumption discussion was. Then we'll come back on the 25th of February, and we'll have an open dialogue about the preliminary draft of what this certified budget looks like, and what kind of revenues we're generating, what kind of expenditures we're planning on, where are those expenditures going, and those kinds of things. And then this all rolls up to the March 11th board meeting, when the superintendent provides the full recommendation to the board. After that, we'll publish according to Iowa law, and then April 8th, we'll hold a public hearing where the public can have their input into the process.
April 8th.
And they can comment on the budget that's being presented and so forth. The board will then go ahead and make that approval with any adjustments at that point in time that they might have, and then we'll roll that up to the state by the April 15th date. So that's kind of the process we use over the course of January through the middle of April, and it's well choreographed through there, and allows for a lot of input from stakeholders and the communication back to the board and to the community.
And the total budget for the next year, the total is how much?
Well, right, as I have it projected right now, the total is $218 million.
That's a huge amount of money.
It is. That's a lot of money, isn't it?
Yeah. What kind of resources are there for that?
Well,
yeah.
In school finance, Hani, it's really compartmentalized, and we've talked about that before.
Yes,
you know,
we did.
there's different funding streams for different things that come through the budget. Of that $218 million, the general fund is the largest component of that, about 70%, in fact. And when I say general fund, that's where we pay for our entire instructional program. That's where we hire
and salaries.
Right. That's why we hire the teachers to teach in the classrooms. That's where we hire our custodial maintenance folks to maintain our buildings, and our administrative costs come out of there. Utilities, supplies, equipment, all those things that go into the educational programming all come out of the general fund. And so it is by and far our largest piece of that overall pie of the budget. And then the second, about 20% of our budget, is in the form of capital improvements. And I'm sure you've been watching the process that's taken place over this last year, and the master facility planning and all of those kind of things that have taken place. Well, that represents about 20% of our budget. And so those two pieces alone roll up to about 90%. And then you have a little bit, about 4% in the area of nutrition, where we deliver meals to our students, both breakfast and lunch. And then after-school snack programs and those kinds of things that we have in our nutrition program. And that's all paid for out of its own fund. And then there's, of course, the student athletics and activities piece. And then there's a small fund where we pay for liability and property insurance and those kinds of things out of. And then finally, our debt service. We have a few bonds that are still outstanding, and this year it'll be around 59 cents on our tax levy to fund the principal and interest on those. So that's about 1.5% of our total budget. So that kind of gives you a feel for how we break that down into its component parts.
Do you think that we still have the chance to hire, I know that we have about we have 997 teachers in the district. And in the physical plant, as I remember, we have about 106.
Yeah, a little over 100 folks there.
Yes, over 100. And then we have an administrators, including, of course, central office and building administrators, about 400 something, right, total. So this is a huge workforce. Do you are you still hopeful that we will be able to hire new teachers?
Well, as you know, we've had amazing student growth over the the last four budget cycles. I can give you the number. It's been 1,254 students over the last four budget cycles that we've welcomed into our school system. That's just a really large number of students. This year, we're the third fastest growing school district in the state of Iowa,
Right.
behind Waukee and Ankeny, and then Iowa City comes in third. Last year, I think we were in fourth or fifth place, if you're keeping score. So we've had some really outstanding student enrollment, and that creates pressure for us, of course, to provide more instructional time, instructor time, in order to handle the class size, load, and those kinds of things that we are trying to achieve.
The number that you just mentioned will be added to that because we have about 1,800 something. 18,000.
Well, our
Student,
total
right.
our total certified enrollment for this year is 13,159 students.
13,000.
Mm-hmm. And it's projected to grow over the next over the next three budget cycles. We're supposed to have a little over 1,100 more students in the next 3 years than we have right now. And so the growth is continuing at a very rapid pace, and it continues to put a lot of expenditure pressure on the general fund.
Can you shed some light on some of the positive components in the process of budget season and all the events that are happening now?
Sure. Well, we just got done talking about our student growth,
Right.
and from the CFO chair, I know this seems a little cold and calculated, but every one of those new students brings with them a certain amount of money in the form of property tax and state aid under the school foundation formula. So that's a very positive thing when you're talking about student growth. For instance, the state for fiscal year 15 said that our budget could grow on a per pupil basis by 4%. The allowable growth that they gave us was 4%. But when you factor in our 385 new students, that growth actually turns into 7.1% for our budget. So you can see the huge difference student growth makes for the available resources that we have within our budget.
I remember listening to you explaining to the board members
Mm-hmm.
during the discussion, 2%, 0,
Right.
4%,
4%.
and I was sitting, listening, waiting for you to to deal with this, but you explained it very well, I
Yeah.
think.
Well, you remember last year they hadn't set the allowable growth
Right.
for us, and so this time last year I actually went to the board with three different scenarios, whether it was 0%, 2%,
Right.
or 4%,
Right.
and that's what you remember. And those scenarios then prepared the way for the discussion on what eventually we received for last year.
Were
So-
you happy with what had been decided?
Well,
I know that it was a
Yeah.
little different from what you were trying to direct them to approve, but
it was.
yeah.
And the state percent of growth is so important for a school district. Let me give you just some ideas of how important that is. Right now, our legislators are dealing with this issue. According to
they're so polarized now, the
it is-
Dems and the
it is
reps.
polarized, isn't it? But
How about the independents?
Yeah.
The poor independents like me, they don't have a voice.
Well, right now, under Iowa law, when the governor presents his proposal to the Iowa legislators, they have 30 days in which to act on school funding,
Yes,
okay?
yes.
So by the February 15th of this year, they're supposed to have made a decision on school funding. Right now, it's questionable whether or not they're going to actually be able to fulfill their requirements under Iowa law. We see that posturing, as you mentioned, going on. I believe the Senate has passed 6% but I don't believe the House has come forward with their proposal. But let me give you an example of how that affects Iowa City. Every percent of allowable growth, whether it's between 1 and 2, or 2 and 3, or 3 and 4, means an additional $1.5 million to our budget that we can use to deliver our educational program. So you're talking a large amount of money, $1.5 million between whether it's 4% or 5%, or whether it's 3% or 4%. That's a huge amount of money. Then that in itself compounds over time, and let me give you an example of that. Back in 2003, they gave us 1% state growth. If we had received only 2%, 1 more percent for that year, and then in fiscal year 12, when they gave us nothing, when they gave us zero, if we would have gotten 2% in that year, over the last dozen years of our budget, we would have had, on an annual basis, every year, $12 million more to work with to deliver our educational program. That's a staggering sum of money, just in that little percent of growth. And so, you know, when our parents, when our patrons are talking with our legislators, etc., this is really a great thing to keep in mind. That percent of growth is really our lifeblood. It's really what we depend on through the school aid formula to fund all of our educational programming that we have to deliver. And it is a big deal, whether it's 2% or 3%, because it really, over time, makes a really big difference in the amount of resources we have.
I have really to give you credit for all the efforts that you're doing to explain this to the board members and the audience in general. I wish the audience would be able to really continue watching the Board of Education
Sure.
and listen to you. But this is one of the challenges. Do we have more challenges in the preparation of the next budget? Give me some.
Well, we do. I think the thing that concerns me the most right now is that our savings account's going down. And really what that means is that on an annual basis, we're living a little bit beyond our means. We're spending a little bit more than we're bringing in, and we're having to dip into our savings account. And we've gone in the last 3 budget cycles from an 8% in our savings account down to, I'm projecting this year, about 1.5%. And for a district our size, we should be running at probably about a minimum of 5% so that we can adjust to surprises that come up within our budget. And so our big challenge for this coming budget cycle is for us to be able to put together a budget that matches our revenue and expenditures on that level. One of the big changes that have occurred over the last 4 years is that we've lost over $5.6 million in federal money that used to come into the school district that we don't receive anymore.
5 million in 3 years.
5.6 million in the last four budget cycles, right?
Oh.
From 2010 to 2014,
Right.
we've had that reduction.
Wow.
And it's been in the form of the federal stimulus dollars, the educational job fund monies, and federal grants. And remember the sequestration conversation?
Right.
Those types of things. We've lost money from our federal sources. And that squeezes the revenue side, and then we have to do a commensurate amount of squeezing on the expenditure side to make the two match.
Yeah.
And so that's our challenge for this year ahead.
In addition, of course, to your plans for the new buildings and
Yes, absolutely. With our plan to open up our first elementary in fiscal year 15-16, that's going to be some additional costs. And then as we move forward with the high school, and some additional costs there in fiscal year 18-19 in moving that forward, and then the 2 more elementaries after that. I mean, those all have to factor into our expenditure side of our equation as well. Yeah. So those are huge challenges for us.
Well, Dr. Hansel, it has always been a wonderful time spending with you here and trying to help people understand what's going on. Before I continue and wrap up our conversation, I would like to remind our audience that to get ready for registration for kindergarten.
Oh, yes.
That was important, and as a matter of fact, I was planning to do this, but you reminded me because when you talk, you wanted to say a lot of things about our student success.
I do. We just completed a review with the Department of Education. They come in and they do really a comprehensive review of our curriculum, compliance with rules, state law, code, those kinds of things. And we just had our exit interview last Friday, and they haven't even issued the report yet. But I was just tickled when I heard their comments, because there were so many people on the team that were just they were just so effusive with their praise about the depth and the breadth of the curriculum that we have available for our students, the rigor that we have available for our students, and it was just exciting to hear them talk about all the successes that are going on with our students. And I look forward to the report because I think it'll really point out a lot more of these things. But just on that short first blush, it just reinforces for me that we're giving our community an excellent value for the dollar invested in their education here.
Well, I was one of the parents who were honored to be part of the voice of parents to the accreditation meeting. And it was really good chance because we had a meeting with them for about, let us say, we started 4:30, we finished about 7:30. I mean, like, about 3 hours. We are talking about curriculum, about administration, about everything. And they were open to listen to all viewpoints. But I found a lot of positive things that parents said and kids even mentioned.
Yeah.
You are doing a good job, and we would like you to keep the same momentum and the same enthusiasm, let me tell you, as a veteran parent here, and a veteran even employee before, I would tell you that we are a difficult community. And I'm looking at the camera now, and we hardly agree about many things. And some of the difficulties that we face is a lot of misunderstanding of what's going on, know. Sometimes even delay for 2 hours. You find people divided. Some people, oh, you don't care about education.
Right.
And the others say, you don't care about pneumonia. So I don't know. I mean, but that's typical. The letters to the editor today is typical of what we face in this community. So your job is difficult.
Yes.
And but it's good too that we are living an opinionated community, because you have the chance to hear from all sides.
We do. We do.
Of the spectrum.
And we value that very much. And that diversity of opinion that's brought to us, it just enriches us and makes us better and makes our final decisions better. And it's you're right. We do have our set of challenges, and the budget is just one of those pieces. That's kind of a roadmap for us. It's a guide, but it's not set in stone. I mean, that's what a budget does. It gives you a general guidance of how you're going to proceed in the year ahead, and then we take that, and we never want finances driving issues. We want education to be driving the issues, and then we put resources behind those priorities, and that's how the budget's designed, and that's how we set it up and operate it each year. So,
Thank you, Dr. Hansel.
Thank you for having me.
And thank
Hani.
you for listening and for following us. We are going to be on Channel 21, Channel 18, as well as YouTube. So if you're curious, where is your money going? It's a chance. If you don't follow Channel 21 or you don't have cable to watch Channel 18 PATV, which we thank them very much because they provide us with all this facility.
Sure.
Please go to YouTube and you will find an answer for many of your questions. Dr. Hansel, I give you 1 minute to talk to the parents. If you have anything finally you want to say.
Well, sure. We have a fabulous school system here, and even though this is only my second year, I've really come to appreciate the value that our community brings, and their participation at our board meetings, the input that they give us on a regular basis, just helps us all do our jobs just that much better, and having that input. Our budget process is transparent. We open it up to everyone, and we would just invite folks to continue to be a part of that process. And we would just, as we move through these next few weeks of presenting the budget to the board and that kind of thing, those opinions are welcome.
We would like to see you soon again.
All right.
Thank
I'd like
you very
to come
much
back.
for a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
With our audience on education.
Thank you.
Exchange. Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.